Hello everybody, and many thanks for taking time out to attend this webinar from PNMsoft discussing the transformation of customer service through automation. We're going to be covering the elements around correspondence tracking, and that is a system that has been built on the PNMsoft BPM solution called SEQUENCE. Adrian, do I have control of the desktop?
Yeah, you should do, Paul.
Yeah, okay, great, thanks. So we're going to briefly just have a high-level view of the SEQUENCE solution, of the correspondence tracking solution, cover off a couple of the case studies and the business benefits, and then quickly into the demo, which Adrian will manage for you. So the problem that we are addressing is the ability to quickly provide and improve customer service depending on how the customer is interfacing with you, whether it be through a portal, through a post room, whether it's correspondences via letters, email or text. So it's the ability to support multi-channels, and often in those environments the management of the information and how you track it is both labor intensive and time consuming, and often has an impact across many different systems and silos of information. Especially in the finance industry, regulation from the FSA and other such bodies means that there is an important requirement to keep the track of correspondence and any record keeping, and that incoming communication that is generated should be based on process and business rules, and the automation of that can remove huge amounts of time and cost from the process. Different workflows and processes can support different types of correspondence, and we'll talk in the presentation around everything from managing checks that are coming into an organisation through to complaints or any type of correspondence that supports customer service. In the current climate, there is a lot of paper, either forms, letters, and other such paperwork that need to be OCR'd into a digitized environment, but quite often following that there is quite a painful procedure in how that information is distributed around an organisation. And for managers who are managing the process, or for the organisation, depending on role and function, getting visibility of where particular items are in the process or how the process is performing, that helps identify bottlenecks or root cause analysis. Being able to see the information in a very clear real-time environment is another area that we provide a solution for. So the correspondence tracking solution built on the SEQUENCE solution takes the input from the customer front end of the business, as I said, via letters or email, web forms or even texts, and SEQUENCE then is handling based on rules and logic laid down in the design environment of the process to determine based on either keywords, phrases, amounts, so depending on what check amount, if it's over £1,000 or under £1,000, can be routed one way or another, and that a case view of how that information is then managed can identify prioritization to help with peaks and troughs of workloads, while all the time maintaining database updates and system integrity. And based on the agility of the processes, you can then distribute the data, provide a data model underneath that will support dashboard and monitoring, being able to provide updates to an archive that is managing the traceability and auditability of information, and then managing the output of the process to update an ERP system or a CRM system or a case management view of how you're tracking that particular individual and any correspondence related to that individual. And then most importantly, providing a real-time update to the customer, either back as a automated generated letter or via a text message or any other form of communication that you want to manage as part of the process. A brief example of a large insurance company that is using a large-scale solution. In this environment, Sequence, from a correspondence tracking perspective, is managing many changes in either the policies, managing checks and distribution into wealth funds, updating forms that arrive in their post room every day. So they have an automated post room capability, scanning the letter, digitizing it, and then Sequence is then picking the document up from that as part of the end-to-end process, and based on the logic is triggering the automatic updates defined by policy and workflow routes based on the company's business rules. This has meant a lot of removal of human latency and human error from the process. Tasks are generated and added to the appropriate work queues based on workload balancing and resource management, as well as skills management. So we're able to direct traffic and correspondence also based on teams and their skill sets. And the entire workflow is then monitored by the process owners using dashboards, managing the information against specific KPIs or contractual service level agreements that they may have with their customer. Providing automated alerts that are raised in the event of delays allows the particular managers of the process to very quickly find the root cause and deal with it in short time, as opposed to being historically told that there was an event that caused a delay. The most important thing is being able to provide an update to the customer in any way that customer wants notifying. As I say, Sequence can provide outputs through IVR to mobile devices, text messaging, or the generation of letters that can either be emailed or sent through the post. Another organisation using correspondence tracking built on Sequence is a large energy company that manages the requests from customers to provide quotations to supply their gas, usually via tenders. Literally thousands of requests a month coming into the organisation. Sequence is capturing the tender details and automatically providing a routing to the sales team from the front end of the business, again based on the details based in the request from the customer. Structured set of action items can be completed in the bid response, capturing best practice and forwarding any administration to the appropriate sales team. So automating not just the post room element, but also the bid response element. And so you can have a very quick process removal of the traditional manual processes where information may reside in emails and inboxes. This way you get a very fast turnaround to the customer in a very competitive market. The governance and control laid down by the organisation is now embedded in the rules and the logic of the process, again removing human latency and human error. For this company, it's meant the optimization of the sales force and their front desk, and by automation of the workload has meant a very fast turnaround from request for information all the way through to the delivery of a quotation. Each tender response follows all the approval and review stages, meaning that the escalation of authority levels is now a automated process rather than a manual process. The business benefits as a whole have meant that our customers are gaining competitive advantage by being able to deal with the customer request on a faster turnaround environment. The actual reduction in cost from a manual process to an automated process has meant that the actual process has become cheaper, and therefore the profit margin on the process or the environment handling the request has increased. Most importantly, of course, is the customer response and customer service satisfaction levels increase. Maintaining compliance with regulation is one of the key environments that we support, given the banking regulations, and being able to track and audit process is very important. The monitoring in real time of the workflow and the performance and building management reports provides the ability to constantly improve the process, but at a very subtle, granular level. And improved client information discovery provides a dynamic case management structure that allows all elements of information, whether they come from silo databases, to be managed on a process level under case management artifacts. The bottom line is better process results and improved client satisfaction. Being able to measure and evaluate individual team performance has been one of the key invisible benefits. Quite often the knowledge capture of the process and the knowledge management that the organisation is trying to achieve now comes out of teams or individuals' heads and can be designed into the process and captured by the organisation to improve the overall performance of the organisation. Being able to understand why one team is outperforming another team is quite useful in trying to manage transformation of processes. Being able to improve staff utilisation based on skill sets to meet the needs of internal service level agreements also means a more process-centric view of how the organisation deals with customer satisfaction. Within all this, there tends to be an opportunity to remove full-time employees from back office functions to front office functions. We've seen a number of customers with large call centre environments being able to staff more appropriately the front end of that process by removing back office heads and redirecting that headcount into dealing with the customer. Reducing costs of maintenance and infrastructure is important because this solution can be delivered as a hosted or managed service, and the application can be acquired as a software as a service. So it allows you to maximise the return of investment with an improved customer satisfaction result. So just before we hand on to the demonstration, I just wondered if there were any questions from any members of the audience before the demo.
Yeah, hi Paul, it's Adrian here. Just to draw the attendees' attention, there is a question and chat facility on GoToMeeting. so that should be visible on the right hand side of your screen. We do have one question about follow-up and accessibility to the presentation. So I would say to that there's more information on this on our website at www.pnmsoft.com. I'll also be putting up an email address, which is info at pnmsoft.com on the final slide. So if there's any request for the slide deck or any further conversations that we can have with you, please do just drop us a note to that inbox and we can pick that up.
Great. So with that then, Adrian, I'll hand over to you for the demo.
Thanks very much, Paul. Okay, what we're going to look at first of all is a demonstration of a correspondence tracking solution that has been built up in Sequence. I'm going to run first of all through a couple of slides to give you an overview of what you're going to be seeing. So a process overview, then actually a demonstration of the inbound document resulting in a sequence task. That sequence task going to a queue of people, and in this demo environment it's just a broadcast queue to 3 people, but we can talk more about the sequence functionality in terms of queues and load balancing work across multiple teams. We will have a look at a form within Sequence that can be used to review the inbound customer correspondence and process the sequence task. We'll then have a look at some of the management information that comes out of Sequence and the real-time gauges that give the managers of the customer service operation the data that they need to be able to quickly react to changes in inbound documentation. And we'll also have a look at the Sequence workflow designer and form editor. So the scenario of the demonstration is one of a magazine publishing operation. Within this operation we have 2 publications, Business Process Management Essentials and BPM Experts, and customers are sending in their correspondence to do a number of things, and in the demo we've built forms to handle the update of their magazine subscriptions, changes to their postal address, and the ability to submit a direct debit mandate, so payment information. In this scenario, the documents are being scanned and indexed by a third party, an outsourced operation, and as those documents are scanned in, they are converted into a PDF format, and within the file name, within the metadata within the file name of that PDF, we have a reference to the account number and the document type. We then have a demo file listener which is detecting those files and is making a web service call across to the Sequence engine, and it is that web service call with the file name and the doc type as parameters which is creating the sequence task, and at that point we can go into Sequence and see the work being flown through the Sequence portal. So I'm now going to go on to a virtual PC, effectively a Windows server that I have running on my own laptop here, so that I can demonstrate some of this functionality to you. So I have a couple of just standard Windows directories here. The important one is this one here called Inbound Docs. So this is effectively giving you a demonstration of how a document being dropped into this area So in this case, I'm actually going to manually move a file, but it could well easily be something like a document scanning operation that's going to take the file and move it through into this directory where it's going to be picked up by Sequence. I'm going to start my file listener, which is just a little utility that we've written, which is going to keep an eye on this directory here, this inbound document directory, and when it detects a new file coming in, we'll make a web service call through to Sequence. So you'll see here I just dragged and dropped my file across, so that's mirroring the document scanning operation. And we can see some feedback messages as well, which I'm just putting into the screen of this demo application. But in our real-life production systems, these are written out into log files with various alerts on and so on. I'll just move a few files across so we get some processes being created in Sequence. And you can see that we've got processes 293, 294, and 295 have been created within the Sequence server for me. So I'll just stop that as it's a little bit heavy to run constantly and come out of that. And we'll go into the Sequence portal. So this is the Sequence front end. Now, Sequence is built upon a Microsoft technology stack. So Sequence itself is an application, and it has a number of web parts which are deployed on top of a SharePoint portal. We then sit upon SharePoint and Microsoft SQL Server, and all of the front end is very customizable within SharePoint, so you can give it your own branding, your own look and feel. You can control what users see, and you can have users that see only a subset of the information. If you wanted to, you could make part of the portal external facing as well, so you can have some element of self-service within Sequence itself. You can see here that those processes that I started using the PDF documents coming in have actually come through now and have been used to create new Sequence processes. So these are tasks within my inbox within Sequence. They've been assigned to a queue, and I know that because we have this multiple person icon here. So I can go and open one of these up and we can have a look at the form. So the first thing we see on the left-hand side is some information about the process. So when it was created, what control I have over it, whether a message was attached to the process when it came through, and also a tree view of the process which is built up over time. This is a very simple demo process. It just has a couple of steps in it. But we can also see that it's been assigned to a queue. It's been assigned to a queue of 3 people. It's a Sequence broadcast queue. So Sequence in this example has just been asked to send this particular process to all 3 people, and we now have a race condition as to who's going to pick it up first. And I'm going to pick this particular process up, which immediately removes it from the view from the other people, so we can't have them picking up the work as well. In the real-life scenarios that we have, which after this actual run-through, I'll show you some screenshots from there, we actually have a much more complex queue algorithm, which is based on the amount of work coming in, the priority that's given to that particular end customer, the skill set within the working staff at that particular time. So as a end user in that customer service operation that I'll show you later, it's much more about real-time balancing of people and resources, and who can do what job actually dictates what I would be able to see and pick up from the queue. So I've now got notification that the change of address has come through. We have a notification that the task has been fetched by me, and in this particular demo I can return it to the queue if I need to. I've got a title around the process, and I should say that this form is a demo form. Everything here is very customizable. In fact, I built this form up myself just a couple of days ago using the Sequence form editor. It has some data that's been pulled out of the database based on the account number that it got from the PDF file. It has some new address details, so we have some tasks here where we ask the customer service rep to review the submitted address change. So we have visibility of the PDF file coming in here as well with the new address. We go through some internal procedures in this scenario to verify the address, and then we can enter our new changed address, which is coming through from the document into this form. And then once we've done that, we can confirm that all the changes have been made, and we click on address change completed or submit to move that forward. And just put in a few details so I can hit complete, and that's going to go off. And in this particular example, that's the completion of the workflow in terms of the manual intervention. And in a moment, when we drop into the Sequence workflow editor, you'll see that actually after this manual piece, there was a database stored procedure which went off and updated the database with the new contact details. Similarly, we have some example processes here for managing the subscription for the magazine, and also for managing the direct debit maintenance. And you'll also notice on this form that we have some additional buttons as well. And again, this is entirely customizable within the Sequence framework and the Sequence form editor. These are allowing us to break out and send additional messages to people if we wish to. So again, another example where we have an example of a form, an example of the PDF document, or whatever documentation document file type is coming through, being shown as an iframe within the browser, and some steps that need to be completed before the change can be made. So within this portal, we also have some other tabs which we can use to illustrate information in terms of the performance of the business, which I'd like to run through as well to show you some of the capabilities of Sequence in terms of the management information. So we have some very rich graphs, monitoring and gauges that we can use as part of the Sequence web parts to go and get data from the Sequence database in real time. So what we find is that commonly, in terms of volumes coming through, things are often done retrospectively. So you may know as a business that you processed 1,000 pieces of documentation in the last week or so on. But actually getting those figures for now, as in, what is outstanding at this particular moment in time, how many people do you need within the customer service operation, what's your exposure in terms of how many people you have in today working on that operation, and how many pieces of correspondence do you have that you need to change before month end or something like that. That information is very difficult to come by, and is often a labour to actually put together. So you're reporting on events that have already happened. Whereas here we can take the data straight out of the database and give it to the management of that operation, so that they can make decisions in real time in terms of who needs to be within that operation, what skill sets do they need, and what areas should they be focusing on to ensure that your customer satisfaction is right up there. So here we have some examples of standard bar charts showing inbound new customer requests, new subscriptions to the 2 magazines in the scenario that I'm running through. We also have a view of the queue as well. So out of the processes that we had, you know, how many subscription changes have we got waiting in the queue? How many changes of addresses and direct debits have we got waiting? How many others have we got? We can also generate statistics as we go, so we can capture how long it's taking to complete each process or each task within a process. So you can quickly identify the hotspots. So you can set yourselves thresholds. So you can say, okay, in the example of, let's say, direct debit maintenance, you know, it's a fairly simple update in terms of the customer's accounting information. We think that the customer service representative should be able to handle one of those claims realistically in under 6 minutes. They may sometimes take a bit more if it's complex, maybe up to 10 minutes. But anything over that is definitely a concern. And we can look here and see that over the last 100 requests, we've actually been averaging 12 minutes per process. So it looks like that's an area that needs a bit of focus on. It's definitely not, you know, within the green or amber that we'd hope, and which has probably been used in terms of the metrics to determine your head count and so on. So let's go and have a look in that process in a bit more detail, see where the hotspots are, and maybe also use Sequence to simulate what would happen if you allocated more people to that task and tried to bring that level down a bit. Also have some further examples just here, just to build up on the scenario a bit. So how many people are cancelling their subscription to the magazine, and how are we actually performing maybe against some internal SLAs or times to close tasks, and who's doing the bulk of the work. So let's say just some examples. Because we're using SharePoint, it really opens us up to using the full Microsoft technology stack, and one thing we can do within our Sequence portal is integrate through to Microsoft reporting services. So in addition to all the bar charts, the gauges, you know, the speedometers that you've just seen, if you wish to, you can also surface a lot more of that data in the high level detail through to the management team as well. So if they wish to, they can go and find their hotspots looking at the gauges and actually drill down and come to a page like this where you have a whole number of different search criteria. Okay, let me come out of that front end, and what I'd like to do now is drop down into the design environment as well, and give you a view of that. So we have a Sequence administration site which is separate to the runtime, and it gives you control over the process design, the monitoring that we saw in terms of who can see which charts and what data they display, and also the organization structure. So you can set up people directly within Sequence, but we also integrate directly into Active Directory. So if you're already using an AD server within your operation, we can hook into that and get all the usernames and so on out of there. In terms of the workflow, I have a number of workflows here in terms of doing Sequence demonstrations, but I'm going to go into the document listener process that we looked at and ran through a moment ago. So Sequence Workflow Editor gives you a Visio-style representation of your process, and the design tenet of Sequence is that it's operatable by a business analyst in order to create the actual process flows themselves. So each workflow is formed from a number of activities, and just on the left-hand side here you have some view of the capabilities within Sequence. So we have human activities, flow activities, which are like your business rules, so if, else, and various ways to join different activities together. We have server-side activities, so we can integrate through to databases using stored procedures with Windows Communication Foundation. We can start off extra workflows, so you can have workflows within workflows, and unified comms, external services, SharePoint integrations, and web services. So in all, that gives you a very powerful toolbox to be able to create a workflow. It's also a very powerful tool in terms of process manipulation as well. So we can quite quickly add in new tasks, new messages, put in business rules to only fire on certain events, on certain thresholds, and so on. So just talk through this particular process. We started off, we had a web service listener, which was waiting for my little demo utility to send a web service call through. We then had a document type switch, which checked to see what the document type was, and dependent on that went down one of these three routes. In terms of a demo, we just have this all within one process, but within the actual framework, we would look at breaking these out into separate sub-workflows so that they're more manageable in terms of permissions and in terms of monitoring the different processes. Then each one of those leads on to a database store procedure, which was providing the update for us before the process actually comes to an end. Let me just come out of that. I'm just going to review if anybody has raised any questions for us. We have one question about having multiple people review. I've demonstrated here a very simple process in terms of somebody just opening up a process, pretty much actioning that process in the there and now, and then moving it to closed. We can't. Unfortunately, that's not often the case, actually. So my demonstration is a very simplistic view of the world, and we do commonly find that organizations need multiple approvals to get around a process before it can go through to completion, or maybe having the actual process going out to multiple people to approve. In this particular demonstration, the way that I've set it up in terms of just having a very simple sequential process, we can split the process out and send approval notifications out to multiple people, and actually have an event called a wait event, which will bring back all of the different processes again once they're completed. So in the scenario of having either an escalation to approve, then we would do that as subsequent tasks. So I would enter the change of address. It would then go to as another task to, for example, Paul to approve before the database update occurs. Alternatively, I could enter the address and then multiple task activities would go to the people who need to approve that. So maybe somebody needs to do a validation that the address is legitimate. It looks up in the postal office register. Somebody else needs to sign off at the same time. So we can split the process out into multiple pathways if we need to. Okay, so on that note, I'm going to close down the workflow editor and just go back to the slides. And just as a final point, I'd like to come back and talk about a live solution for a large European insurance company using the SEQUENCE CTS framework. So what I've demonstrated to you is very quickly the ability of SEQUENCE to take in files, to read the file metadata, to use that as a decision in terms of which process to start and to route that through to a queue of users. But the demo process I've shown you is a very simplistic view of the world, and it's our experience that it's often a lot more complex than that. So to give you some sort of flavor of the projects that we've been working on recently, the scenario here is over 100 customer service users across multiple offices taking in over 1,000 items of correspondence each day. That was giving the operation a headache in terms of making sure that they had the right people in, that those people were working on the right pieces of work based on customer priority, process priority. So was there a financial value attached to that, to that process, to that documentation? Was there a regulatory requirement to action that process within a certain time frame? And making sure that the people that they had at their disposal to work on all of these different pieces of correspondence were working in the most efficient manner and picking up the highest priority based on a number of criteria. So Sequence in this example is solving that problem because we have a much more complex queuing system. We have multiple queues. People belong to multiple teams based on their accreditation in all the different processes that they work on. And Sequence is in the real time balancing the work across the different teams in terms of who can pick up which work and which items they should be working on, and providing the management team with the visibility of what teams are performing, which bits are working well, which bits aren't. The users follow tasks through in Sequence, so they literally just pick up new items of work. They don't know which piece of work they're getting because Sequence is doing that decision for them, which means that people don't get to pick up the easy items. They get to pick up the items which they're most qualified to work on and which have the highest priority. They work through the form within Sequence, so they have a document viewer on the right-hand side showing them the customer correspondence that's been scanned in, which could hopefully be a template, but we've seen examples where it's literally a handwritten scroll. They work through the tasks that need to be done, and then they update the multiple legacy systems either via manual or automated methods where we've been able to integrate. We have plans in this area also to extend, so we've done the customer correspondence tracking in terms of the manual documentation coming through to the post room. We're looking at expanding that through online interactions, which is very easy in the Sequence view of things. Picking up telephony, so giving people, first of all, forms to track telephone calls, but ultimately integrating with the inbound telephony system, and also looking at listening to inbound emails on certain email addresses as well, and using those to fire off Sequence processes to give a full picture of all the customer correspondence and communications that are coming through. In terms of the operation, they're currently dealing with over 50 processes, and they range in priority from new business to processes which have a financial value attached to them, such as a new subscription, a new service for a particular customer, through to just general servicing requests like I've demonstrated to you, such as a change of address or change of personal details. As I said, the users are allocated the next item from a queue based on the customer's priority, the priority attached to that particular process, and the user's accreditation status for each of the processes. And they have a view, which I have some screenshots of in a minute, which gives them a view of the document and the questions that they need to work through. And we also have a methodology to flag up to users that they have more documentation coming in for an in-flight case. So this could be where a customer's logged a request to change their address, and then a few days later they send in a request to do a withdrawal, and that's something that we flag up to the service representative to merge those into one single request. So you can see here a view of a user inbox. So we have multiple processes coming in. The SharePoint, the sequence web parts are pretty much from the correspondence tracking framework, allows you to rapidly deploy a solution that looks a bit like this, with an element of tailoring to it. And here we have a screenshot of an example form. So the document view on the right hand side has actually been blanked out because of the confidentiality of this particular process. But you can see an example of the layout here with the account details coming through at the top in the middle frame, with all the questions that need to be answered as part of that process. So almost like a process within a process. And dependent on the answer, so at the moment all the radio buttons in this screenshot are set to no, but dependent on the answer, additional lines of information or questions appear, which guide the customer service representative through the entire process. And then we have another screenshot showing some of the gauges, so a real-life view of what's going on for the business, how many processes they currently have in work, how many are waiting in the queue, and so on. And that brings me to the end of a rather whistle-stop tour of the correspondence tracking framework on Sequence. As you can see from the slide here, our website is at www.pnmsoft.com. And if anybody